Welcome to the channel, friends. Today we are signing up for an interesting and slightly shocking topic: 10 banned American cars of the 1960s. Many believe that the cars of the 60s were better than modern ones. But is this true? Or are we just looking at the past through rose-colored glasses of nostalgia? The 1960s are often called the golden age of the king of the auto industry, a sea of chrome, powerful engines, fins, and muscular design. But behind all this creature were cars that were so dangerous, unfinished, or simply inadequate that they were banned, recalled, and literally wiped off the road. So we are faced with the real question: were the cars of the 60s really better? Or is it just a myth? Let's figure it out together. Before we start, support the channel with a like and a subscription, and share this video with your friends to discuss these cars together. Don't forget to ring the bell so you don't miss new episodes. Thanks for your support, and let's go! Number 10, 1966, Mercury Comet. Cyclone GT390. The untold story of a banned 60s muscle car, the 1966 Mercury Comet. Cyclone GT390 is often remembered as a sharp-looking, performance-driven muscle car that symbolized the power wars of the 1960s. With bold styling, respectable speed, and Mercury's push to break out of Ford's shadow, it seemed like a success story. But few people know that this car became one of many from the 1960s that eventually fell victim to recalls, safety scrutiny, and the quiet erasure that automakers don't like to talk about. The Comet Cyclone GT390 was Mercury's way of stepping into the growing muscle car arena. It was equipped with a 390 cubic inch V8 engine, pushing 335 horsepower, serious muscle for its day. With its aggressive stance, optional stripes, and the available 4-speed manual transmission, this car could run with the best of them. It was fast, loud, and bold. But here's where the story takes a different turn. Safety? Not a priority. The Comet Cyclone GT, like many performance cars of the era, was built for speed, not for safety. Crash testing was minimal, and safety regulations were still in their infancy. These cars had no headrests, no crumple zones, weak seatbelt systems, often optional, drum brakes that struggled under hard use. The GT390 gained a reputation among early owners for unpredictable handling at high speeds, especially when combined with the car's relatively soft suspension and imbalanced weight distribution. It was a powerful car that didn't always feel stable when pushed to its limits. The recall that automakers don't advertise. By the late 1960s, the Mercury Comet Cyclone was quietly recalled in certain batches due to issues with steering components and front suspension integrity. Several owners reported dangerous failures, including loose steering under load, a potentially deadly problem for drivers expecting precise control at speed. Though the recall wasn't widely publicized, this problem, along with evolving safety standards, effectively pushed the Comet Cyclone GT off the stage. It's important to note that the Cyclone GT wasn't banned in the sense of being outlawed overnight. It was part of a group of 1960s cars that couldn't meet the new, stricter federal safety and emissions regulations that began rolling out in the late 60s and early 70s. Automakers didn't fight to save them. Instead, models like the Comet Cyclone GT were discontinued, recalled quietly, or redesigned beyond recognition. By the early 1970s, the powerful but flawed Cyclone GT390 was gone. The 1966 Mercury Comet. Cyclone GT390 is a perfect example of why we need to look at the 1960s with balance. Yes, these cars were stylish, exciting, and loaded with personality. But many were also unsafe, rushed into production, and not built to last under modern scrutiny. When people say, they don't make them like they used to, that's true. Sometimes, that's actually a good thing. Number 9, 1969. AMC AMX390 Go Package. The muscle car that deserved more respect. The 1969 AMC AMX390 with the Go Package is one of the most underrated and misunderstood muscle cars of the late 1960s. Built by American Motors Corporation, AMC, a company often overshadowed by the Big Three, the AMX wasn't just a sporty coupe. It was a bold move to compete directly with the muscle car giants from Ford, Chevrolet, and Dodge. But despite its muscle credentials and unique design, the AMX 390 Go package became one of those cars that quietly disappeared from the streets, not because it lacked power or presence, but because AMC didn't have the marketing power, deep pockets, or wide dealership network to keep it alive. A true muscle car, built to challenge the giants. The 1969 AMX 390 Go package came with AMC's biggest and most powerful engine at the time, a 390 cubic inch V8 producing 315 horsepower and 425 pound-feet of torque. It was paired with either a 4-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic, and it could hit 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 6.6 seconds, which was highly competitive for its era. The Go package wasn't just about raw power. It also included performance suspension upgrades, dual exhaust, power front disc brakes, Magnum 500 wheels, racing stripes, and Go badging. For a factory-built muscle car, the AMX was surprisingly short. It was a true two-seater, unlike the Mustang or Camaro, which always had back seats. This made the AMX unique in the muscle car world, where most American performance cars were coupes or sedans. Why it faded away. Despite its speed, sharp handling, and bold styling, the AMX 390 Go package suffered from a few problems. Limited AMC dealer reach. Fewer showrooms meant fewer people ever saw it. Brand stigma. AMC was known for economy cars, not muscle machines. Underwhelming marketing. AMC simply couldn't compete with Ford's Mustang campaigns or Chevrolet's Camaro domination. And then there was the problem of safety and emissions. By the early 1970s, federal regulations were clamping down on horsepower and demanding cleaner, safer cars. AMC, already financially stretched, couldn't justify pushing the AMX line forward in the face of these new costs. By 1970, the AMX as a two-seater was discontinued, effectively erased from the muscle car battlefield just as things were getting interesting. Number 8, 1967 Chevrolet Impala is one of those classic American cars that people instantly recognize. By the late 60s, the Impala had become Chevrolet's flagship full-size car, a perfect blend of style, size, and performance. But what makes the 1967 Impala, with the turbo-hydromatic transmission, especially important, isn't just its looks or its power. It's the quiet engineering leap that helped shape the future of American cars. In 1967, Chevrolet made a bold move by offering the turbo-hydromatic 400 TH400 as an option in the Impala. It wasn't the first automatic transmission, but it was a huge step forward. The turbo-hydromatic was a 3-speed automatic transmission known for its smooth shifts, durability, and ability to handle high horsepower engines, something earlier automatics struggled with. Before the turbo-hydromatic, many automatics were either sluggish or couldn't handle the torque of big block V8s. But the TH400 changed that. It was fast, reliable, and strong, and it made the Impala even more versatile. Why the turbo-hydromatic mattered. The TH400 gave drivers something new: power with comfort. You could order an Impala with Chevrolet's big block 427 V8 engine, pair it with the TH400, and have a car that was both lightning quick and easy to drive in traffic. It gave muscle cars, cruisers, and even some luxury cars the ability to deliver high performance without the tricky, slow-shifting automatics of the past. For everyday Americans in the 1960s, many of whom were driving increasingly longer distances, this mattered. It made big, powerful cars more accessible to drivers who didn't want a manual transmission. The 1967 Impala itself. The 1967 model year brought a subtle but important redesign to the Impala. The body was more rounded and aerodynamic compared to the boxier 1966. It introduced a more refined interior with optional bucket seats and center consoles, pushing the Impala toward a sport luxury balance. It came with safety upgrades like a dual master cylinder braking system, energy-absorbing steering column, and more padded interior surfaces, part of Chevrolet's response to growing federal safety regulations. Whether ordered as a two-door coupe, convertible, or a four-door sedan, the Impala was still the heart of American family cars, but with the new transmission and optional big engines, it was now a performance sleeper too. Number 7, 1968 Oldsmobile 442 W30. The 1968 Oldsmobile 442 W30 was not just another muscle car. It was Oldsmobile's bold statement that they could build a street machine that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the best from Pontiac, Chevrolet, and Dodge. While the 442 name originally stood for 4-barrel carburetor, 4-speed manual, and dual exhaust, by 1968 it had evolved far beyond a simple option package. It became its own separate model, a true performance car, not just a trim level. But if you wanted something even more serious than the already impressive base 442, you could order the W30 package. The W30 wasn't built for looks, it was built for the drag strip. What made the W30 special? At the heart of the 1968 Oldsmobile, 442 W30 was a 400 cubic inch 6.6-liter V8, factory rated at 360 horsepower and 440 pound-feet of torque. But insiders and enthusiasts widely believe those numbers were underrated. This wasn't just a big engine. It was fine-tuned for real performance, special cylinder heads, high-lift camshaft, a forced air induction system with functional hood scoops, red inner fender wells, which became a signature visual cue for W30 cars. The W30 also came with a fiberglass hood, making it lighter than the base 442. If you went all in, you could pair it with the close-ratio 4-speed manual transmission and 4.33 rear gears, making it a serious threat on the street and the quarter mile. It was a factory sleeper. The beauty of the W30 was its understated appearance. Unlike some muscle cars of the late 1960s that shouted for attention with stripes and graphics, the W30 looked mostly like a regular 442, unless you knew what to look for. There were no wild spoilers or huge badges, just subtle details, like the air intakes under the front bumper and the lightweight hood, that told muscle car insiders this was something special. It was a factory-built street weapon that didn't need to scream to get respect. Why it matters. The 1968 Oldsmobile 442 W30 holds a unique place in muscle car history because it balanced power, class, and everyday drivability. Oldsmobile built its reputation on offering more refined, comfortable vehicles compared to some of the rougher, rowdier muscle cars on the market. But the W30 proved they could deliver brutal straight-line performance without losing that Oldsmobile polish. Number 6. 1967 Dodge Dart GT273, compact muscle with surprising style. The 1967 Dodge Dart GT273 often flies under the radar in the muscle car world, but it's a car that deserves serious respect. In an era dominated by big, heavy, high-horsepower machines, the Dart GT offered a more compact, agile alternative without sacrificing performance or style. When Dodge redesigned the Dart for 1967, it was given smoother, more modern lines and a more refined look compared to its boxier predecessors. The GT trim was the sportiest version you could get that year, and when equipped with the 273 cubic inch V8, it became a nimble street performer that could hold its own. The heart of the Dart, the 273 V8U, under the hood, the 1967 Dart GT could be ordered with the 273 cubic inch V8 engine producing 235 horsepower when paired with a 4-barrel carburetor. That may sound modest compared to the big block beasts of the time, but the Dart's lighter weight gave it impressive acceleration and handling for a compact. The 273 wasn't built to dominate the drag strip like a Charger or a Super Bee. Instead, it provided solid, everyday performance with enough punch to surprise bigger cars off the line. It was quick, affordable, and approachable, making it a favorite among younger drivers who wanted muscle car attitude without the insurance premiums of a larger V8. GT, more than just badging. The GT package wasn't just about slapping on some trim pieces. It included bucket seats, unique badging, sportier suspension tuning, optional rally wheels. The Dart GT had a clean, balanced look, especially in two-door hardtop form. It didn't scream muscle car, but it carried itself with quiet confidence. It was practical, too. Unlike some cramped muscle coupes, the Dart had decent interior space and visibility, making it a solid all-around car that could handle daily driving duties without complaint. An underrated gem. The 1967 Dodge Dart GT273 represents a smart, no-nonsense approach to performance. While the car didn't dominate headlines like Dodge's later big block monsters, it delivered a sweet spot of affordability, size, and respectable power. Number 5. 1963 Chrysler Turbine Car, America's boldest automotive experiment. The 1963 Chrysler Turbine Car is one of the most fascinating, daring, and misunderstood vehicles in American automotive history. It wasn't just another stylish sedan. It was Chrysler's bold attempt to completely reinvent the automobile by putting a jet engine under the hood. Yes, a jet engine. Not a piston-driven V8, not a six-cylinder, a gas turbine. At a time when American automakers were chasing bigger engines, more chrome, and more horsepower, Chrysler was aiming for the future of transportation. Their goal was simple but revolutionary. Build a car that didn't need a traditional engine, one that could run on almost any fuel and offer smoother, more efficient driving. The turbine engine, how it worked. The Chrysler Turbine Car used a turboshaft engine, similar to what you'd find in a helicopter. It had far fewer moving parts than a traditional engine, which meant it required less maintenance and could last longer. Even more impressive? The turbine could run on nearly anything: gasoline, diesel, kerosene, even cooking oil and perfume in some tests. The engine revved at an astonishing up to 60,000 RPM, but the car delivered power smoothly thanks to a specially designed torque converter. The driving experience was unlike anything else on the road. The turbine car had a unique whooshing jet-like sound instead of the rumble of a V8, and it produced almost no vibration. Chrysler believed this was the future of the automobile, a real-world test. Between 1963 and 1964, Chrysler built 55 turbine cars, all of them hand-assembled with sleek Italian Ghia-designed bodies. But instead of selling them, Chrysler launched an ambitious consumer trial. They loaned the cars to 203 American families across the country for 3 months at a time. Chrysler wanted to see how real people would use the car, what they thought of it, and whether this futuristic technology could become practical. Some loved it, some struggled with its quirks. It started slowly in cold weather, and the throttle response wasn't as sharp as traditional cars. But overall, the turbine car was surprisingly reliable. Why it disappeared? So why did this incredible machine vanish? There were several reasons. The cost to mass-produce the turbine engine was extremely high. Emissions control technology at the time couldn't handle the nitrogen oxides produced by the turbine. The 1973 oil crisis shifted focus to fuel economy and smaller engines. In the end, Chrysler crushed all but 9 turbine cars. It wasn't because the car failed. It was because the world wasn't ready. Number 4. 1966 Plymouth Barracuda. The 1966 Plymouth Barracuda is one of those cars that doesn't always get the credit it deserves. Often overshadowed by the Ford Mustang, the Barracuda was actually one of the first cars to kick off the pony car revolution, and the 1966 model marked a major turning point for Plymouth's compact muscle contender. While the first Barracuda debuted in 1964, actually 2 weeks before the Mustang, it didn't explode in popularity the same way Ford's car did. By 1966, Plymouth had refined the Barracuda's styling, performance options, and overall personality, preparing it to stand tall in one of the most competitive eras of American car culture. The most iconic feature of the Barracuda remained its massive fastback rear window, a single sheet of glass that wrapped dramatically from the roof down to the rear deck. At the time, it was one of the largest pieces of automotive glass ever installed in a production car. The 1966 model brought sharper lines and more chrome detailing, giving it a more aggressive and stylish presence. Plymouth also gave the Barracuda a redesigned grille and a cleaner front fascia that made the car look more modern and ready to battle its pony car rivals. The 1966 Barracuda offered a variety of engines, from practical slant-six options to something with real muscle. The top of the line was the 273 cubic inch V8 with the Commando package, producing 235 horsepower. That might not sound massive compared to the later muscle monsters, but for a light, compact car in the mid-1960s, it gave the Barracuda serious street cred. More importantly, the 1966 Barracuda was nimble and easy to handle. Unlike the big block beasts of the late 60s, the early Barracuda delivered a driving experience that was fun, responsive, and surprisingly well-balanced. One of the Barracuda's secret weapons was its versatility. Thanks to that huge rear window and fold-down rear seat, the Barracuda offered exceptional cargo space for a sporty car. It was almost like a muscle wagon, blending performance and practicality in a way few other cars did at the time. The interior was simple but comfortable, with a sporty dash and optional bucket seats. Plymouth focused on making the Barracuda accessible to young buyers who wanted a cool, fast car without breaking the bank. Number 3, 1967 Plymouth Belvedere GTX Hemi, the gentleman's muscle car. The 1967 Plymouth Belvedere GTX Hemi was a game-changer. Not just another muscle car, but one that Plymouth called the gentleman's hot rod. It combined raw, brutal performance with a more refined, almost understated appearance. In an era where big power often came with flashy stripes and loud colors, the GTX stood out by being just a little more mature. But don't let that fool you. Beneath its polished exterior was one of the most feared engines of the time. Sophisticated styling meets serious muscle. The 1967 GTX was based on the mid-sized Belvedere, but it was carefully dressed to set it apart. It featured a unique grille, special badging, hood scoops, and stylish chrome trim that gave it a cleaner, more upscale look. Plymouth didn't overload it with wild graphics. Instead, the GTX carried itself with quiet confidence. Inside, the GTX came with upgraded interiors, bucket seats, center console, and more thoughtful details that made it feel like you were stepping into something a little classier than your typical street brawler. But under that polished image was a car that could absolutely dominate the quarter mile. The legendary Hemi. What made the 1967 GTX truly special was the available 426 cubic inch Hemi V8. This wasn't just any engine. The 426 Hemi was the stuff of muscle car legend, delivering 425 horsepower and 490 pound-feet of torque. It was built for speed and built to last, derived from Chrysler's racing program, and it transformed the GTX into a serious street weapon. The Hemi GTX could rocket from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just over 5 seconds, extremely fast for the era, and still impressive today. Plymouth also offered the Super Commando 440 V8 as the standard engine, which was no slouch either at 375 horsepower. But the Hemi? That's the one people still talk about. Built for performance. The 1967 GTX wasn't just about straight-line speed. Plymouth equipped it with heavy-duty suspension, upgraded brakes, and reinforced drivetrains to handle the extra power. This was a car you could actually control, even with all that muscle under your right foot. The GTX also offered optional 4-speed manual transmissions and performance axle ratios. This was Plymouth giving serious drivers the tools they needed to push the car to its limits. Rare, respected, and remembered. What makes the 1967 GTX Hemi so special today is its rarity. Only a small number were built with the HEMI engine, making them highly collectible. Back then, it was an expensive option that not many buyers ticked. But today, those cars are highly sought after by collectors and Mopar enthusiasts. Number 2. 1968 Pontiac Firebird 400 Ram Air2. The 1968 Pontiac Firebird 400 Ram Air2 is a car that doesn't always get the spotlight it deserves, but among true muscle car fans, it's quietly respected as one of Pontiac's most potent machines. Introduced at a time when the pony car wars were heating up, the Ram Air2 package took the Firebird beyond the level of a stylish street cruiser. This was a serious performance weapon, built to challenge the fastest cars of the day. What made the Ram Air2 special? Pontiac's Firebird 400 was already a tough competitor, but the Ram Air2 option elevated it to a whole new level. It came with a 400 cubic inch V8 that wasn't just big, it was built for battle. The engine featured round port heads, a significant performance upgrade over the earlier D-port heads, high-flow exhaust manifolds, a high-lift camshaft, forged pistons, and a more aggressive overall tuning. It was rated at 340 horsepower, but most experts agree Pontiac seriously underrated it. The Ram Air2 was one of those engines that felt faster than the numbers suggested. It pulled hard, loved to rev, and delivered brutal mid-range power that made the Firebird a street sleeper. A wolf in sleek clothing. Unlike some muscle cars that shouted for attention with stripes, scoops, and flashy decals, the Firebird 400 Ram Air2 carried itself with quiet confidence. Sure, it had the functional twin hood scoops and subtle badging, but it didn't scream race car. That's what made it even more dangerous. The Firebird's design in 1968 was clean, sharp, and aggressive without being over the top. It shared some DNA with the Camaro, but Pontiac gave the Firebird its own unique identity, from the split grille to the sleek tail. Inside, it was driver-focused. Bucket seats, available rally gauges, and optional 4-speed manual transmission meant this car was built for people who actually wanted to feel the road. Rare and overlooked. The Ram Air2. Firebird was incredibly rare. It was a mid-year introduction in 1968, and only a very limited number were produced before Pontiac moved on to the Ram Air4 in 1969. Because of its short production window, and because the Firebird often lived in the shadow of the GTO and the Camaro, the Ram Air2 cars became an underground legend, prized by hardcore Pontiac enthusiasts, but largely forgotten by the general public. Today, they are highly collectible and command serious attention at auctions. Finding a genuine Ram Air2 Firebird in good condition is like striking gold for muscle car collectors. Number 1. 1965 Ramler Marlin. The 1965 Ramler Marlin is one of the most fascinating yet often misunderstood cars of the 1960s. Built by American Motors Corporation, the Marlin was an attempt to do something genuinely different. It wasn't a pure muscle car, it wasn't a family sedan, and it wasn't exactly a luxury cruiser. It was something in between. It aimed to blend sportiness with personal comfort and a fastback body style that stood out from everything else on the road. But while the Marlin made a bold statement, it struggled to find where it truly belonged. The styling. You either loved it or you didn't. The fastback roofline was the Marlin's most distinctive feature. AMC had originally previewed it on a compact car called the Tarpon concept, but when they moved to production, they shifted the fastback onto the mid-size Rambler Classic platform. This gave the Marlin a larger, heavier appearance that divided opinions. The long, sloping rear roof, combined with wide rear quarters and a fairly narrow tail, created a shape that was striking but unusual. Some admired its sleek silhouette. Others felt it looked awkward, especially when compared to the more balanced designs coming out of Detroit at the time. But whether you loved it or didn't quite get it, the Marlin was impossible to ignore, comfortable, but not quite sporty. AMC marketed the Marlin as a personal luxury car, a new category that would eventually be perfected by cars like the Ford Thunderbird and Buick Riviera. It came with a well-equipped interior, bucket seats, a center console, and upscale trim. It was definitely comfortable, but it lacked the raw performance to compete with emerging muscle cars like the Mustang or GTO. Buyers could choose from a range of 6-cylinder and V8 engines, but even the top-spec V8, a 327 cubic inch with around 270 horsepower, didn't give the Marlin the speed or excitement that muscle car fans were beginning to crave. The Marlin rode well, and it was a solid cruiser, but its identity was caught between worlds. Too heavy to be sporty, too unique to appeal to conservative buyers, and not quite luxurious enough to compete at the top. A sales struggle and a quiet exit. The Marlin debuted to much attention, but sales were disappointing. In its first year, it sold around 10,000 units, far below expectations. AMC revised the design in later years, but the car never really found its audience. By 1967, the Marlin was quietly discontinued. It wasn't banned, it wasn't dangerous, and it wasn't poorly made. It was simply a car that didn't fit neatly into the categories of the time. Why the Ramler Marlin matters. Today, the 1965 Ramler Marlin is celebrated by collectors and enthusiasts who appreciate its boldness. It represents a moment when AMC took a real chance, trying to create something fresh in a rapidly changing market.